Hello everybody, this is an incredibly late review video. I mostly held off from making it because I wanted to actually see the full patch, and our half patch was quite a few days in, but now I finally have, so let me give my opinions on it. It's gonna be a bit more of a casual chat, and I'm gonna try and keep it brief for the most part, but I will still have some structure to it. So the first thing that we should talk about is minigames, because I am currently standing here and this is one of the more frustrating ones, though I think that this is a fairly easy level. Normally the things defending the mushrooms can move, and then the mushrooms can move as well, and you have a limited amount of battery. Outside of this one, we also had a robot, which was probably my favorite one of the two, because it just requires quick thinking while in front of a conveyor belt. So you get a robot, you're told exactly what it's supposed to look like, you pick the parts off from here, and if there's no parts for you to pick, then the whole machinery just kinda speeds off until there is for you some parts to pick. Normally you're not really allowed to make any mistakes, but a lot of these parts are kinda easy, I would like to say. I'm just showing the first level because it gets very tedious. After, like, the later levels, there's quite a few more robots and quite a few more parts, and we just need to get the gist of the minigame. We also had the toss a ring on a mushroom game, and normally their different hats were supposed to give different points, but they didn't, so it's legitimately you have a donut and you toss it on a mushroom, and if you want to play it lazy, you can just toss on the same one over and over again, as long as you wait for the donut to despawn off their head. So technically you don't even need to do all of this turning that I'm doing. You could just stand here tossing on one of these and it will work. I found this one to be incredibly boring, honestly. So I'm gonna pause my recording and we can talk once I'm done. So, minigames. The box one, the one with the grabby claw, honestly it's kinda infuriating, but not to the pinball level minigame level. The throw a donut on a mushroom is kinda boring, and then the assemble a robot one is honestly kinda alright, but here's the issue with rating minigames in this patch cycle. This patch cycle gave us so much content that this isn't just like your mint after a dessert, this is like half a berry level of content compared to absolutely everything else that we have gotten. So my rating there would be but it doesn't even like impact the rest of my enjoyment in the patch. Next up, let's talk about the map, because the map is absolutely huge. We have given all this space to play around with, and it's all one city, and it's like, compare that to Boneyard and tell me that that doesn't look about of a similar size. How about the rest of... Even take the rest of Itzaland and overlay this, and this is like good 2/3 of the way there. Like, the map drops have been absolutely insane this patch cycle in general, but especially during 2.8. I did not expect this. There is some complaints from people, mostly that a lot of the map areas, because it's one and the same city, they sort of look very similar to one another. But yeah, it's like the same city, so duh. I suppose the other complaint is that the navigation is a bit tedious if you don't get the outfit that's specifically meant to navigate this map, because then you just, you have to do it the normal way, which is solve puzzles by finding which mechanisms you can, like, activate and be creative with the other abilities that you have, because you can use gigantification in here, and you can also use sticky claw, as long as you don't actually, like, collect the beetles with your AoE beetle collecting skill, in case you have floral rebirth. So be careful with floral rebirth, you can actually remove your sticky claw points, which isn't great. But what I'm trying to say is, if you don't have the ballerina, you kind of need to be creative in how you navigate this map. But I find that even being creative in how you navigate this map brings quite a lot of joy. There is a lot of space for you to do parkour in, and currently we're in a good position to have, like, an overlook over the whole map. There's some variation in tonality and kind of how the map appears. The sad bit is, I think, that way. Come on, map. Yeah, I think I'm staring at, like, the golden court right now. Yeah, the sad, gloomy bit is over there. We have a destroyed district, very flowery, towards the Shroomsara Nursery and the Everbloom Gardens. Then you have more of a lively market, and yeah, there is, like, a tonality difference, house to house, place to place, but obviously it's one cohesive city, and it looks like one cohesive city. I think the only thing that destroys the map from being a extremely good photo shoot location is that it is a Titan city, so everything is kinda super big and not Nikki sized, so taking pictures next to furniture can make your photographs look a little bit dorky. But honestly, as our first foray into city maps, I really, really, really love this one. Haven't found all the chests yet. I haven't taken out the now updated beta map that shows you where those chests are. I haven't gotten all the dues yet, which I should if I want all the rewards from the dragon. So there's still things for me to do, even though this patch has been out, what, like, quite a few weeks now. I think it's like a 7 or... Yeah, it would be like a 7-week patch, wouldn't it? So, like, we're like 4 out of 7 weeks in. Don't question Mirta's math, I might be kinda off. Might have even been longer, but what I'm trying to say, I still haven't exhausted it. I like it. I would say, if I was to compare it to Boneyard and Itzeland, Itzeland would, like, receive a C tier, because a lot of it is just giant trees with some climbing equipment, effectively. There are, like, prettier places, like the Colosseum and the burial place. I forgot the word for graveyard, thanks brain. Then I would rank the Boneyard at about the A tier, because I really like its vibes overall. But there's also quite a lot of angry monsties everywhere around, and quite a bit of Boneyard, by intent, is just empty space, because it's supposed to be a more natural place, but that means that it has, like, very specific places that you would go to take pictures because they look picturesque and you wouldn't, like, be using most of the map all the time. This is definitely an S tier map. Sure, it's giant, so for future photo prop locations, my favorite one would probably be in the back entrance of the Golden Court facing towards the Gold Desert. That one is a pretty one. Also, Everbloom Gardens has nice greenery. And I will gladly stand anywhere that kind of obscures the size of it all a little bit, like on top of statues, and anywhere that's away from Shroomceras, because I just don't really enjoy them. But still, this is absolutely an S tier map. Time for the next section, which is the story. And if we're gonna talk story, let's do it from a story relevant place. If you haven't done the full story yet, this is the boss fight arena. I'm gonna call it that. I think that's gonna be helpful for you, but also maybe don't watch the review for a whole patch if you haven't like finished the patch yet. I think that's kinda spoiling yourself a little bit. I'm gonna try and be fairly vague. So I'm gonna say that the stakes this time around were incredibly high, and the story was very dark even for Infinity Nikki standards, and we have had quite a few very dark stories before, like, you know, the guy puppeteering his dead theater troupe members while pretending that they're still alive and throwing a theater performance. Considering that we had that, when I say dark, I do mean dark, and when I say stakes are high, I do mean stakes are high. There was some very good writing and storytelling happening this time around, and some people are gonna probably disagree with me. The first two chapters were very meandery. You kind of get introduced to this whole place, and you get introduced through the cheerful notes. After that point, it starts pulling towards its dark elements, and that's when, in my opinion, it gets good. There are a couple of points that hit very, very hard in the story. They wrote the final boss in a way that she isn't a cartoony villain, which have confused some people, while from my perspective, that's just good writing. Remember that in reality, nobody is a cartoony villain, pretty much. Everybody has good justifications for the actions that they're taking, even if their actions are absolutely comprehensible. Incomprehensible? Bad. Bad, 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 bad. So what the bad guy of the story did was pretty effing awful, and shouldn't really be forgiven, because for one thing, it threw the whole world off its order. When you start effing about with like removing a whole part of nature, a whole god from the equation, yeah, I think that is a very high level of effing about that probably shouldn't be done. So it's not that her actions can be excused. It's more that she was written like a human that had excuses for those actions. And that if you take it entirely from her point of view, even if you don't agree with her actions, you can see why she made them. At the end, the bad guy says that if she started all over again, she would do everything the same way that she did, which kind of rubbed people the wrong way, I think, but if you understand the mentality that has led to her actions, that kind of makes sense. So it's not about cartoony villain being a cartoony villain, it's about people making choices that are perhaps really the wrong choices for the whole planet, but probably what they perceive as being the right choices for them and their people. So, you know, that threw people off. Second thing that threw people off is that there is a lot of lore that's just thrown at you, and a lot of concepts that just get thrown at you and explained in ways that is fairly muddy. I tried to explain the whole patch lore in the video, like I'm 5 and like you're 5, and I'm pretty sure that even my interpretation is only like 95% correct, because it's quite hard to keep track exactly what has happened, or what has happened astrally in somebody's head, and because we're talking about gods, and gods are not necessarily rooted in one place at one time, the explanations for how things happened could actually be numerous. It includes kinda your interpretation for how the whole god of reincarnation reincarnates part goes. Like, do they get like a soul baby? And that soul baby is like half astral, and eventually they just go bye-bye and the soul baby takes over the one body like it's like a puppet. Maybe it's that sort of deal, you know? Or is their soul baby solid? Is their soul baby themselves at the same time as they still exist? So effectively, how you understand the story will have a lot to do with how you interpret god mechanics. So that can be hard to wrap your head around, and I'm pretty sure that several different interpretations can be true at the same time, which can be perceived as bad writing, I would say, if you write in a way where several different interpretations can be true at the same time. That's probably making it a bit too poetic and wishy-washy for it to actually be comprehensible for majority of people. Like, if we can have lore arguments, then the easy conclusion to come up to is that lore wasn't as clear as it needed to be. So you could take points off that, or you could just put those points to this is artistic creativity, and maybe there being like multiple different interpretations for how you could see the story, as long as you got the gist of it. That perhaps that's not necessarily a bad thing, but either way, the story in itself, it's the least clear, most high intensity story that we have had in the game so far. People also didn't quite like how they treated one of very hard-hitting sad points in the story, because one of the characters just gets kind of brought back at the end, and more importantly gets brought back off screen. That did not hit people well. That being said, this is my review and not other people's review, and I'm gonna say I don't mind lore ambiguity. There are indie games that are specifically written to have significant lore ambiguity. Normally it's like horror games, or it's games that have very surface easy mechanics but a lot of lore underneath if you dig deeper. I kinda enjoy that, so lore ambiguity in itself does not quite hit me as hard as a negative point, and I got the gist of the story, which is good enough for me, to a point where I could try and explain it to other people. So it's not like that I'm completely lost and I'm a deer in the headlights. I also just enjoyed it like I would a good movie, or like if it was like a ride that I was on, which means that sometimes the fact that it hit me emotionally, or the fact that I was invested, outweighed the lower points of, oh, this character gets brought back off screen and it's just explained away, and that sort of thing. So for me, the story this time around was absolutely S tier. I would say that we have matured significantly, and we have really went away from what Infinity Nikki was in 1.0. Now, this point, I'm not entirely sure if it's good or bad. I think it's good considering the rest of the franchise. I think we are graduating out of La La Rainbow Land and into very grounded issues that Nikki's gonna face. And I have a lot more confidence now that not only can Infold write dark stories, but they can write dark stories with people in particular, and not just mushrooms or pillows or sentient blueberries, but quite specifically people. So if this is the way that we're going, if this is the strongness that they have selected for their second arc, I think by the third and fourth or fifth arc, we might just like hit total Dark Souls, which is kind of what the whole franchise always was, but it is kind of interesting to juxtapose 2.8 versus 1.0. I think that comparison really hits you when you try putting them side by side. I like this. I'm not entirely sure that everybody's gonna like it, and it hitting you this far in kind of means that people that thought that this wasn't for them now need to come back and play through a lot of the patches that aren't for them, and people that just wanted a cozy relaxy time might not necessarily like the new story direction. At the same time, I think that this was Infold legitimately taking feedback. I think a lot of what people didn't like with the original Wishfield story, including how unserious and Rainbow Land whiplashy it was, I think that they're trying to push it to more towards what their audience wants, and hence why we now have storytelling like this, which I much prefer. I had to take you to this location for the side quests. I'm not gonna show you exactly where it is, especially if you haven't done the side quests yet. However, the fact that these are gravestones, I think sells the situation as what it is. Infold has also been very unafraid to tell very dark stories with people this time around, and not just sentient flying pillows, to a point where people said that maybe they were using sentient flying pillows in order to walk around censorship, in order not to tell extremely dark stories with people. No. Some side stories are so dark that it really hit me yesterday. So, the themes that it explores. One side quest explores the themes of corporal punishment, quite specifically an execution, or going against the majority of, well, the company that was working around here. Then a suicide out of guilt by that person's friend that has happened a long ago. And this side quest, whose gravestones I'm standing right in front, a suicide happens off stage in the middle of the side quest. And this kinda deals with person being at the end of their life and kinda losing everybody that they were trying to protect up until that point. So he effectively sends Nikki on an errand, writes a goodbye note, and offs himself before you're able to return from the errand. Which I did not expect of Infinity Nikki, not gonna lie. They're tackling very dark themes on screen with people characters and not with sentient pillows. I think this is a good direction for them to take. Now, I don't want the whole game to be doom and gloom. I am all for us having filler patches or a bit of meandering inside of regular story patches where it's not all doom and gloom, but I'm just saying that they were very not afraid to tackle very serious doomy and gloomy topics inside the storyline this time around, and it has absolutely surprised me. Hi, let's talk about combat now. And I thought that it would be good for me to actually show you combat while talking about it. I think that the game has found a good medium when it comes to combat. Mind you, I can use bow that is not the default bow, but in re-challenging King Asuna, I cannot use any of my extra abilities. So I can't, for example, summon my behemoth, which I did the original time fighting them. Do I think that Infinity Nikki combat in 2.8 is hard? No, it's kind of easy for me. But do remember that this is my dress-up game and not actual Dark Souls. I wouldn't actually wanna die every single time when I miss a dodge. I think that this is good enough for what it is. Even if I made a lot of mistakes and needed to actually pop out my potions, I'm not mad with this. We being so far into the game now, into the storyline and everything, I only have one Mira Crown Arena left to do, and I found it to be a lot less annoying this time around. She has 2 phases, so let's skip the cinematic, go to the second phase. They were still S-lings, and they still had quite a bit health, but it just wasn't quite as many of them, wasn't quite as long of a Mira Crown Arena, it wasn't quite as many tight corners. I didn't need to face 2 bosses at the same time at any point. Majority of bosses capped out at 45 to 60 health, even though there's still like 180 health boss, I believe one of them, out in the open world. And obviously, this lady has 2 180 health bars. But it's nowhere near as annoying as I would say quite a bit of combat was in 2.5. Like, yes, she has mechanics, they're fairly forgivable. You have a lot of health.
Without regret.
You can use all of the bows that you have already purchased in this game. So I think majority of players will not have problems defeating her. And I think that in a dress-up game, that should kind of be the point. Like, we're not a combat game, guys. We're a dress-up, and we should like remember that. So this is enjoyable. This is not in any way, shape, or form hard, and that would be my takeaway when it comes to combat. Now we're approaching the conclusion, and there's still quite a few things that I haven't mentioned, like how about the fact that there's about, I think, 5-ish dungeons scattered around the city that you can fall into, that you can repair a lot of parts of the city while going through, and each took me 10 to 20 minutes each, so it's actually quite good and interesting content. Or how about the fact that this update has launched with a lot of quality of life upgrades, such as the fact that I can now switch off all effects on my clothes, hence why you're seeing me standing behind prayers. And it no longer has the annoying circle at the bottom of it, which actually means that for the last bits of the story of this arc, I specifically went on it in the outfit, in the dress, quite specifically, that I went through 2.0 in, as kinda an ode, a remembrance, a closing of the circle, and I really love the fact that I can do this. Is the game perfect? Hell no. We still have quite a few ways to go. I'm still gonna have actual feedback where I think they can improve and change things. Like, for one thing, the reason why I'm not standing in Wishful Rosa outfit right now is because the butterfly on that doesn't die, so I have, like, for example, beef with our die system. But this was an excellent patch. And this excellent patch also over-delivered, in my opinion. 2.7 was a very low point, because the patch was exactly 10 minutes long. I don't think that I even classify it as a patch. I can forgive it, considering that the next patch that we got right afterwards is absolute S tier. Everything from quality of life upgrades to the amount of content that we got, to the environment, to the storyline, to the kind of story beats that the game is now suddenly not afraid to explore. It really gives me hope for the future. That being said, considering the size of this, I kinda expect autumn to be our vacation period, where patches 2.9, 2.10, and 2.11 will probably be like closer to a nothing burger compared to this. We got our last big map update, so maybe we're gonna get like another 2.6-esque story wrap-up in 2.9, but afterwards I'm just gonna assume that we're gonna meander and have a jolly good time. But just the fact that we closed so strongly makes me believe that 3.0 will open really strongly as well, and we're gonna have a good story patch cycle in there too. I really love what they did in 2.0 in general. It feels like it was evolving as time progressed. I think that 2.0 itself didn't land quite as well as Infold maybe wanted it to land, but 2.5, 2.6, 2.8, those are all absolutely excellent patches. Where was I going with this? Yeah, so I feel like they kind of did a bit of experimentation still, but I kind of feel like they, in the end, nailed the whole vibe and what this game really needed. So I kind of have hope that we can open 3.0 very strongly and close it strongly, instead of opening it in rather meandery way and closing it strongly like we did here. Like, we're evolving as a game, as we're progressing. We are definitely evolving, and I'm happy about that. And hell, even with the 2.0 story arc, it was no longer Wishfield of where all story happened in 1.0 and 1.1. A lot of like staunch fans will argue going, oh no, we got very important world building, but it wasn't like the main story scenario, is what I'm trying to say. Main story scenario updates for Wishfield Saga were very, very sparse. You have 1.0, you have 1.1, then you have the retconned intro change, which is a very small part of 1.5. And then you have the setup for the next story arc, which is 1.11. Outside of that, it was all standalone stories and world building. The fact that main story for Itzaland was 2.0, 2.5, 2.6, 2.8 was a much better pacing, if you ask me. It felt a lot more natural, a lot better. I felt like I had a lot more to look forward to, and they tied the world building around the themes that were the running themes for the main story questline. So, as much as I hated the 2.1 patch, as I feel like it was approaching death in a very kindergartner way, and Nikki's supposed to be a grown woman, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, they all make sense if you're thinking about the themes that are running through the main storyline scenario. They kind of feel like a flavor side stories that are still thematically in theme. 2.7 we don't talk about because it wasn't an update, it was a nothing burger. We're gonna forget that that even happened. Anyway, this has been S tier, and I think that we have been evolving as a game, and that the story and what it is and how it goes and even its pacing is kind of on an upwards trajectory, which gives me a lot of hope for the future of this game, and I've really enjoyed it. That's all my thoughts. That's my full review of this patch. This patch was good. It's so good that I think a lot of people are trying to get their friends and family to play Infinity Nikki, which they're gonna be joining like a year and a half late. But that's saying something. When you get a patch that's good, that a whole bunch of people try and get others to actually join the game, I think you nailed the patch. So let's hope that they're gonna continue nailing it. If you disagree with me, or if you want to like share your own impressions for 2.8, feel free to do so in the comment section down below. Differing opinions from mine are obviously allowed. Like, this is just me. This is just the way that I'm seeing things, and as you could see, there were complaints that people did have about the whole thing, so it's not like it's a unanimously S tier patch. It's just an S tier patch for me, and I think that we're in a very good place, and I like where the game is heading. Thank you for watching such a lengthy video. Thank you so much for my Patreon supporters, and toodaloo for now.